My son asked me to borrow money for the 10th time. When I refused, he cursed at me. A week later, I won the lottery and didn't tell anyone. I never thought my own son would threaten my life. The child I sacrificed everything for became a stranger, consumed by addiction. Before we begin, subscribe and tell me where in the world you're watching from. The phone rang at 8:17 p.m. I knew it was Tyler before I even looked at the caller ID. My stomach tightened into that familiar knot, the one that appeared like clockwork every time my son called these days. "Mom, I need to see you. It's important." His voice had that rehearsed urgency I'd come to recognize over the past 6 months. I closed my eyes, my fingers tightening around the receiver. "Tyler, is everything okay? I just really need to talk to you in person," he said, avoiding my question. "Can I come over, please?" I glanced at the kitchen table where my bills were spread out, the electric notice with its bold red final warning, the property tax statement I'd been putting off. At 65, my teacher's pension barely covered the essentials. "Sure," I said, the word feeling heavy in my mouth. "I'll make some coffee." While waiting, I picked up the silver-framed photo on my mantle, Tyler at 16, grinning in his baseball uniform. His eyes still held that spark then, before college, before he dropped out, before whatever darkness consumed him that he refused to discuss. I traced the outline of his face with my fingertip. "Where did you go, sweetheart?" The doorbell rang 30 minutes later. When I opened the door, Tyler stood there with that disarming smile that reminded me so much of Richard, my ex-husband who'd left us for his secretary 27 years ago. "Hey, Mom." He hugged me briefly, his body tense. I caught the faint scent of cigarettes, though he'd sworn he'd quit. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Coffee's ready." He paced my small living room instead of sitting, glancing repeatedly at the family photos on the wall. "Place looks good. You changed something?" "Just rearranged the furniture." I lied. Nothing had changed in years. "So," he said, finally dropping onto the couch, "I've got some good news." My heart lifted momentarily. "Oh?" "Yeah, this amazing job opportunity. Marketing position, great company." I nodded, allowing myself a sliver of hope. "That sounds wonderful. The thing is," he leaned forward, elbows on knees, "I need a little help to get there. My apartment's been having issues, landlords threatening eviction because of some misunderstanding with the rent. And my car broke down." The hope deflated. "Tyler, I just need $3,000 to get everything straight," he continued quickly. "My boss promised a bonus that didn't come through. It's temporary, I swear. $3,000. More than the previous requests." I took a deep breath. "I don't have it, Tyler. I'm sorry." His face hardened almost imperceptibly. "You've got savings." "I have $200 in savings," I said quietly, opening my purse and removing my bank statement. "Here, look. After the medical bills from my knee surgery, there's nothing left." He barely glanced at the paper. "What about a credit card?" "They're maxed out." "Jesus, Mom." He stood abruptly. "How can you be so bad with money? Dad always said you couldn't manage finances worth a damn." The words stung. Richard had indeed said that, despite the fact that I'd worked 2 jobs after he left us with barely enough child support to cover groceries. "I can give you $200, I said, keeping my voice steady. "And I found information about a free counseling center. They can help with—" "Help?" His voice rose sharply. "You think I need help? Are you calling me crazy now?" "No, Tyler. I'm worried about you. Your mood swings, the constant money problems, these stories that don't quite add up. There it is." He threw his hands up. "You were never there for me. Always at work, always tired, always too busy for your own son. And now you're worried?" I flinched as he knocked a photo off the side table me with my 5th grade class from 8 years ago. The frame cracked against the hardwood floor. "Tyler, please calm down." "You pathetic old woman," he snarled, his face twisted into something I didn't recognize. "You're going to die alone. You know that? And you deserve it." He stepped toward me, his fists clenched. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own child. "Get out," I whispered. Then louder, "Get out of my house." Tyler stared at me, breathing hard. Then he drove his fist into the wall beside my head, plaster crumbling onto the carpet. Without another word, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. In the sudden silence, I slid down the wall to the floor, my whole body trembling. Something caught my eye. My purse on the counter was open, slightly askew from where I'd left it. I crawled over and checked inside. My emergency credit card was still there, but when I checked the kitchen drawer, the spare key I kept hidden was gone. As I sat amid the debris of my son's rage, a terrible clarity washed over me. The boy I raised was gone, and the man who replaced him might actually hurt me next time. For 3 days after Tyler stormed out, I jumped at every sound. Each car door slamming in the neighborhood sent my heart racing. I changed the locks, but sleep remained elusive. Every creak in my old house jolted me awake, convinced he'd returned with the stolen key before I could replace the deadbolt. When my phone rang on Friday morning, I stared at Tyler's name on the screen until it stopped. He called 5 more times that day. I didn't answer. What could I possibly say to the stranger who wore my son's face? Instead, I found myself driving past his apartment building, a shabby 2-story complex 6 blocks from my house. His car wasn't in the lot. I sat in my 15-year-old Toyota, hands gripping the steering wheel, debating whether to leave the $200 I'd promised in his mailbox. "Excuse me, are you looking for someone?" I startled at the voice. A woman in her 50s with concerned eyes stood beside my car. "I'm Tyler Wilson's mother," I said, rolling down my window. Her expression changed instantly. "Margaret? I'm Linda, the property manager. We've spoken on the phone before. Is Tyler home?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Linda glanced around before leaning closer. "He was evicted 3 days ago. Hasn't paid rent in 4 months. She hesitated. "I probably shouldn't tell you this, but there were people coming at all hours. Arguments about payments. The neighbors complained." My stomach dropped. "Did he leave a forwarding address?" She shook her head. "The unit was trashed, Margaret. Holes in the walls, cigarette burns on the carpet." She touched my shoulder gently. "I'm sorry." I thanked her and drove away, my mind churning. Where was he sleeping? Who were these people demanding payments? The questions haunted me as I pulled into the library parking lot for my volunteer shift. Inside, I mechanically shelved books, finding comfort in their orderly arrangement. If only life could be categorized so neatly. Fiction and nonfiction, problems with clear solutions. "Earth to Margaret." My friend Joyce waved her hand in front of my face. "That's the 3rd time you've put psychology books in the travel section." "Sorry." I tried to smile. "Just distracted." "Tyler again?" she asked softly. Something in her tone, gentle understanding without judgment, broke the dam I'd built around my emotions. Tears came suddenly, embarrassingly. Joyce guided me to the break room, sat me down, and placed a cup of tea in my hands. "Tell me," she said simply. So I did. The repeated requests for money, the inconsistent stories, the rage when denied, the missing key. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, like I was telling someone else's tragic story. Joyce listened without interruption. When I finished, she took my hands in hers. "My brother was an addict for 15 years, she said. "Everything you're describing, the manipulation, the anger, the desperate need for money, it's textbook." "Tyler doesn't do drugs," I protested automatically. Joyce's expression was kind, but firm. "Margaret, I recognize the patterns. The person who came to your house wasn't your son, it was the addiction wearing his face. But there's a support group that meets on Thursdays at First Presbyterian," she continued, "for families of people with substance abuse issues. Will you come with me tomorrow?" I wanted to refuse, to defend Tyler, but the memory of his fist punching the wall inches from my head silenced my objections. The next evening, I sat in a circle of strangers who didn't feel like strangers. Their stories mirrored mine with eerie similarity: parents, siblings, children, transformed into manipulative strangers by chemical dependence. A social worker named Sarah spoke directly to my deepest fears. Giving money doesn't help. It enables the addiction to continue. Setting boundaries isn't abandonment. It's often the first step toward recovery. "I've suggested therapy," I said. "He gets furious. Denial is part of addiction," Sarah explained. "Many users need to hit rock bottom before accepting help." That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I wrote Tyler a letter explaining that I would no longer provide financial support, but would be there when he decided to seek treatment. I blocked his number on my phone, and I cried myself to sleep, mourning the boy in the baseball photo while fearing the man he'd become. Friday evening found me alone at my kitchen table, staring at the lottery ticket I'd purchased weekly for decades, my small ritual of hope. $1 worth of daydreaming. I carefully marked 6 numbers, the same combination I always played: Richard's birthday, our wedding date, Tyler's birthday, the day we bought our first house, the year I started teaching, and my mother's age when she died. As I sealed the ticket in its envelope, I wondered if hope was just another form of addiction, the stubborn belief that somehow, against all odds, everything would magically transform for the better. Saturday morning, my usual routine, coffee, toast, and the weekly disappointment of checking my lottery numbers on TV. I balanced my checkbook while waiting for the announcement, calculating how many months I could stretch my pension before touching my meager retirement account. The cheerful announcer appeared on screen. I absently noted the numbers as they appeared, not really watching until wait. I grabbed my ticket, pulse quickening. The first number matched, so did the second, and the third. My hands trembled as I checked all 6 numbers, then checked again and again. "This can't be right," I whispered to my empty kitchen. But it was. All 6 numbers, my numbers glowed on the screen. The announcer confirmed the jackpot, $47 million. My first instinct was to call Tyler. My finger hovered over the unblock button on my phone. Then I remembered his face contorted with rage, his fist in my wall, his voice calling me a pathetic old woman. If he knew about this money. The clarity hit me with stunning force. Tyler would consume every penny, destroying himself in the process. Whatever his payments were for drugs, gambling debts, loan sharks, this windfall would accelerate his self-destruction. I spent the day researching, discovering that Pennsylvania allowed lottery winners to remain anonymous by claiming prizes through trusts. Monday morning, I drove to a law firm specializing in estate planning, 2 towns away where nobody knew me. "I need absolute confidentiality," I told the attorney, a silver-haired woman named Patricia. "Is that something you can guarantee?" She nodded, professional and unfazed by my nervousness. "Attorney-client privilege is sacrosanct, Ms. Wilson. How can I help you?" I slid the ticket across her desk. Her eyes widened slightly, the only indication that she understood the magnitude of what lay between us. "I need to claim this without anyone knowing it's me," I said. "Especially my son." She didn't ask why, just nodded. "We'll establish a blind trust. The Lottery Commission will announce that the Pine Valley Trust claimed the prize, not Margaret Wilson. Only the trustees, myself, and whomever else you designate will know your identity." "And this is completely legal?" I asked. "Absolutely. Pennsylvania is one of the few states that allows winners to maintain their privacy." She began outlining the process, establishing the trust, appointing trustees, claiming the prize as a lump sum versus annuity payments. I walked out 3 hours later with a plan. The money would be safe, my identity protected. I drove home feeling strangely calm, as if I'd taken my first independent breath in decades. As I turned onto my street, the calm evaporated. A police car sat in front of my house, lights flashing. Officer Reynolds, whom I knew from neighborhood watch meetings, stood on my porch. "Ms. Wilson," he said as I hurried up the walk, "there's been a break-in." My front door hung open, splintered around the lock. Inside, my living room was ransacked, drawers emptied, cushions slashed, even the air vents removed from the walls. "Was anything taken?" Officer Reynolds asked, notebook ready. I looked around at the devastation. "I don't think so. I don't keep valuables here." Any idea who might have done this? The question hung in the air. Could I say it? Could I speak the words that would officially transform my son from troubled to criminal? Before I could answer, my phone rang an unknown number. I answered automatically. "Mom?" Tyler's voice, desperate and slurred. "I need to see you right now. It's life or death." I looked at the destroyed remnants of my home, then at Officer Reynolds waiting for my answer. "No," I said firmly, both to Tyler and to myself. "I don't know who would do something like this." As I ended the call, I realized I'd made my choice. I would protect my son from the consequences of his actions one last time, but I would not surrender my life or my newfound fortune to his chaos. When Officer Reynolds finally left, promising increased patrols in the neighborhood, I sat amid the wreckage of my living room, numb. The lottery ticket, my golden ticket, was safely locked in Patricia's office safe. No one had stolen anything because there was nothing of value to take. Nothing except my peace of mind. My phone rang again, the same unknown number. Tyler, undoubtedly. I silenced it and began the painstaking process of putting my home back together, stuffing cotton back into slashed cushions, rehanging pictures, sweeping up broken glass. With each item I restored, my resolve strengthened. I would not be a victim, not of Tyler's addiction, not of Richard's abandonment, not of my own misplaced maternal guilt. As I swept shards of my favorite teacup into a dustpan, another call came through Joyce. "The library just called," she said. "You didn't show up for your shift, and you've never missed without calling. Are you okay?" I hadn't even remembered it was my day to volunteer. "Someone broke into my house," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Oh my God, I'm coming over." "No, I'm fine, really. Margaret Wilson. I'll be there in 10 minutes with dinner and a bottle of wine, and I won't take no for an answer." True to her word, Joyce arrived carrying Chinese takeout and Merlot. She gasped at the lingering disarray, but asked no questions as she helped me finish cleaning. We ate at my kitchen table, the wine loosening my tongue. "I think it was Tyler," I confessed, "but I didn't tell the police." Joyce nodded, unsurprised. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Then, making a split-second decision to trust her, "Joyce, something else happened, something big, but you have to promise not to tell anyone." Her eyes widened as I told her about the lottery win and the trust. When I finished, she let out a low whistle. $47 million, she murmured. "And you're not telling Tyler." "I can't," I said simply. "It would kill him." The next morning, I met with Patricia again. We finalized the blind trust with her as primary trustee. The Pine Valley Trust officially claimed the lottery prize, opting for the lump sum payment of $29.3 million after taxes. Patricia helped me establish a new bank account under an LLC, separate from my personal finances. We created a conservative investment strategy to ensure the principal remained untouched while generating income. "What about your son?" she asked carefully. "Do you want to include any provisions for him?" I hesitated. "Not directly, not yet. But I'd like to set aside a portion that could potentially help him in the future for treatment or education if circumstances change." She nodded, making notes. "And for yourself? Any immediate plans?" For the first time, I considered what this windfall meant for me personally. All my adult life had been defined by sacrifice for Tyler, for my students, for everyone but myself. "I'd like to fix up my house," I said finally. "Nothing extravagant, just repairs I've been putting off. And maybe a trip somewhere." "Ms. Wilson," Patricia said gently, "you can afford to dream bigger." That afternoon, I drove home along a familiar route, but saw my neighborhood with new eyes. My little house with its peeling paint and sagging porch could be transformed. I could move anywhere, do anything. The possibilities were dizzying. As I turned onto my street, my newfound optimism evaporated. Tyler stood on my porch, pounding on the newly repaired door. I parked across the street, heart hammering. He hadn't seen me yet. I could drive away, check into a hotel, avoid this confrontation entirely. But running wouldn't solve anything. Sooner or later, I would have to face him. I approached slowly, car keys clutched between my fingers like a weapon. Tyler whirled at the sound of my footsteps. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I've been trying to reach you for days." "My phone was having issues," I lied, maintaining distance between us. "Can we talk?" He gestured toward the door. "Inside? I'd prefer to talk here." I remained on the sidewalk, ready to flee if necessary. His expression darkened momentarily before he forced a smile. "I'm sorry about last time. I was stressed, not myself, but I'm getting help now, I promise." The words sounded rehearsed, hollow. "I'm glad to hear that," I said carefully. "I have this job interview," he continued eagerly. "Really promising position, but I need something decent to wear, you know? Just a small loan, $500 for a good suit." $500. Once, that would have seemed an impossible sum to spare. Now, it was nothing. But this wasn't about money. "Tyler," I said, my voice stronger than I felt, "I can't keep doing this." His face hardened. "Can't or won't?" "Both," I admitted. "I love you, but I can't keep enabling behaviors that hurt us both." For a moment, rage flashed in his eyes, the same rage I'd seen before he punched my wall. Then, unexpectedly, his shoulders slumped. "Please, Mom," he whispered. "I'm desperate. Despite everything." My heart ached for him. Was there any harm in one last chance? $500, I said finally. "But we meet at Starbucks tomorrow, and we talk about getting you real help." His relief was palpable. "Thank you. You won't regret it." As I watched him walk away, I wondered if I already did. Starbucks buzzed with morning commuters when Tyler arrived, clean-shaven and wearing his one decent button-down shirt. I almost didn't recognize him. This was the son I remembered, not the volatile stranger from my living room. "You look well," I said cautiously as he sat across from me. "Feeling better," he replied with a sheepish smile. "I've been going to some meetings, getting my head straight." "Meetings? What kind of meetings?" He stirred his coffee, eyes downcast. "NA, Narcotics Anonymous. I should have told you sooner, but I was ashamed." The confession stunned me. He'd never admitted to drug use before, always denied it vehemently when I suggested it. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely audible above the coffee shop chatter. "It started in college. Just pills for exam stress, you know? Then it escalated." He looked up, eyes glistening. "I'm 14 days clean now. It's not much, but it's a start." I wanted desperately to believe him. The vulnerability in his expression seemed genuine, his contrition authentic. "The job interview is real," he continued. "Entry-level position at an insurance agency. Nothing glamorous, but it's honest work with benefits." He pulled out a printed email confirming the interview. "It's tomorrow at 2 Alni. I just need to look presentable." I slid an envelope across the table. $500, as promised. He took it, hands trembling slightly. "I'll pay you back, Mom. Every penny." "I don't care about the money, Tyler. I care about you getting well." "I know." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm trying, really trying this time." Over the next 3 weeks, Tyler became the son I'd longed for all these years. He called regularly just to check in, never asking for money. He got the insurance job and proudly showed me his first paycheck. He brought dinner on Sundays, helped fix my leaky faucet, and spoke openly about his recovery struggles. "One day at a time," he'd say, echoing the NA mantra he claimed to have embraced. I began to relax, to hope. Maybe the break-in had been someone else. Maybe hitting rock bottom had finally shocked him into change. Maybe I could eventually tell him about the lottery winnings and even set up a trust for him. We settled into a comfortable routine. I carefully maintained my modest lifestyle, making only necessary repairs to my house, a new roof, updated plumbing, nothing that would raise eyebrows. One Sunday evening, as Tyler was helping me wash dishes after dinner, he casually mentioned, "I noticed Mr. Abernathy got a new Lexus. Pretty fancy for a retired principal." "His daughter's a surgeon in Boston," I replied. "I think it was a birthday gift." "Speaking of cars," Tyler continued, "yours is what, 15 years old? Ever think about upgrading?" I changed the subject, but the question lingered uneasily. Had he noticed something? Was he fishing for information? The following Wednesday, I returned early from grocery shopping, having forgotten my list. As I quietly entered through the back door, I heard movement in my bedroom. Tyler stood at my dresser, rifling through my jewelry box. He hadn't heard me come in. "What are you doing?" I asked. He jumped, nearly dropping the small pearl earrings Richard had given me on our 5th anniversary. "Jesus, Mom, you scared me." "Why are you in my bedroom?" My voice was surprisingly steady. "I was looking for aspirin," he said quickly. "Migraine." "In my jewelry box?" His expression shifted, the mask of the devoted son slipping for just an instant. "I thought maybe you had one of those pill cases, you know, the decorative kind." It was a flimsy lie, but I pretended to accept it. "Aspirin's in the bathroom cabinet, always has been." That night, after Tyler left, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my phone. Joyce answered on the second ring. "I need advice," I said, without preamble, "and maybe a place to stay for a few days." Joyce's guest room became my sanctuary for the weekend. I told Tyler I was visiting a former teaching colleague in Philadelphia, buying time to think and plan. "Something's not right," I confided to Joyce over Saturday morning coffee. "He's playing a role the perfect son." But I caught him searching my bedroom. Joyce's husband, retired Detective Frank Williams, joined us at the table. "Margaret, I don't want to overstep, but have you considered putting up cameras?" The suggestion horrified me. Initially, spying on my own son felt wrong. But then I remembered the ransacked living room, the fist through my wall, the missing key. "I know a guy who installs security systems," Frank continued. "Discreet ones. I could give him a call." Monday morning, while Tyler was at his job, 2 tiny cameras were installed in my living room and hallway, accessible through a secure app on my phone. The installer also updated my home security system and added new deadbolts. "Mom, you're being paranoid," Tyler said, when he noticed the security company sign in my yard that evening. This neighborhood is perfectly safe. Tell that to whoever broke in last month, I replied evenly. He flinched almost imperceptibly. Right. Good point. The installer had placed cameras strategically, one in the living room overlooking the entryway, another in the hallway leading to my bedroom and home office, but none in private spaces like bathrooms or bedrooms. I needed evidence, not invasion. For 3 days, nothing unusual appeared on the cameras. Tyler visited for dinner on Thursday, behaving like the attentive son he'd recently become. I began to doubt my suspicions, wondering if I was seeing problems where none existed. Then Friday morning, my phone alerted me to motion at my house. On screen, Tyler unlocked my front door with the key I'd never given him. He moved purposefully through the living room to my home office, where he began methodically going through my files. I watched, heart pounding, as he photographed my bank statements, insurance documents, and the paperwork for my pension plan. He spent nearly 40 minutes searching before leaving, carefully relocking the door behind him. With shaking hands, I called Patricia. I need another layer of protection, I told her. My son is searching for financial information. She arranged for a forensic accountant and private investigator to meet us that afternoon. The investigator, Michael Reeves, was a former FBI agent with a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. Based on what you've told me, Ms. Wilson, your son is looking for assets, he explained. The question is why? He needs money, I said simply. For drugs? Michael asked. I thought so, but now I'm not sure. He claims to be in recovery, working at an insurance agency. Michael interrupted gently. Have you verified his employment? I stared at him. No. He showed me a paycheck, but would you mind if I looked into that? Michael asked, along with his recent activities and associations. I hesitated only briefly before nodding. Whatever Tyler was involved in, I needed to know. While Michael began his investigation, the forensic accountant helped me create an impenetrable barrier around my lottery winnings. We moved investments into more secure structures, creating additional shells and trusts that would be virtually impossible to connect to Margaret Wilson. 3 days later, Michael requested an urgent meeting. His expression was grave as he spread photographs across Patricia's conference table. Ms. Wilson, I'm afraid your son is not employed at any insurance agency, he began. He's been spending his days at gambling establishments and meeting with these individuals. He pointed to photos of Tyler with 2 hard-looking men outside a bar. These men are known associates of Anthony Castellano, a loan shark operating in Pittsburgh's South Side. My stomach clenched. A loan shark? Based on our surveillance and audio captured during these meetings, Tyler is deeply in debt, upwards of $50,000. He's been promising his creditors that he can get the money from you. But I don't have that kind of money, I protested. At least they don't know that I do. Michael slid another photo across the table. Tyler sitting in his car, on his phone. This was taken yesterday. We were able to capture the audio. He pressed play on a recording device. Tyler's voice filled the room. The old lady must have money hidden somewhere. She's different lately, new roof on the house, better clothes. If I can't find where she's hiding it, a pause. Maybe an accident would be simpler. Her life insurance should cover what I owe you. The words hit me like physical blows. My son was contemplating what? Frightening me into giving him money? Or something worse? Ms. Wilson, Michael said gently. Based on this evidence, I strongly recommend filing for a restraining order. I shook my head, still processing the revelation. Is this enough for the police to act? Unfortunately, no. It's concerning, but it's not an explicit threat or conspiracy that would stand up in court. Michael leaned forward. But we can build a stronger case while ensuring your safety. I drove home in a daze, the recording playing on loop in my mind. The son I'd raised, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, was considering harming me for money. That night, alone in my house with new locks and cameras, I made a decision. I would no longer be passive, waiting for Tyler's next move. Whatever demons drove him, addiction, gambling, desperation, I needed to protect both of us from their destruction. Tomorrow, I would begin fighting back. Dr. Elena Martinez leaned forward in her chair, her eyes gentle but probing. Tell me again what Tyler said on the recording. I repeated the words that had haunted me for days, my voice barely above a whisper. The support group had emptied out 20 minutes ago, leaving just Dr. Martinez and me in the church basement. And how does that make you feel? She asked. I laughed bitterly. How does it make me feel that my son is considering harming me for insurance money? Devastated. terrified, and somehow still worried about him. Dr. Martinez nodded. That's the contradiction every parent in your situation faces. You simultaneously fear your child and fear for them. I don't know what to do, I admitted. Part of me wants to confront him, but another part is afraid of what might happen if I do. Your fear is justified, she said. With addiction this severe, especially complicated by gambling debts, unpredictability is the only predictable element. She paused, considering. What resources do you have right now? I thought about the millions sitting in accounts under the Pine Valley Trust. Resources that could solve Tyler's immediate financial problems, but would likely accelerate his self-destruction. I have some savings, I said cautiously, and good friends, a lawyer. You need a strategic approach, Dr. Martinez said. From what you've described, Tyler has shown escalating patterns of manipulation, invasion of privacy, and now potential threats. This isn't just addiction, it's something more complex. What do you mean? Addiction is certainly a primary factor, but the calculated nature of his actions suggests possible co-occurring issues. The Tyler who searches your files and discusses accidents with loan sharks isn't the same as the Tyler who shows up with dinner and fixes your faucet. Both are masks he wears to get what he needs. Her words hit me with terrible clarity. The son I've been seeing these past weeks isn't real, is he? The addiction has become his primary relationship, she explained gently. Everything else, including his relationship with you, is secondary to feeding it. I sat in silence, absorbing this brutal truth. Finally, I asked, so what do I do now? First, secure yourself physically, emotionally, financially. Then consider a structured intervention with professional help. She handed me a card. This organization specializes in crisis interventions for situations like yours. They work with law enforcement when necessary. That evening, I called the number. The intervention specialist, David Keller, listened carefully to my story, asking pointed questions about Tyler's behavior patterns, his debts, and the potential threats. Mrs. Wilson, what you're describing isn't just a son who needs help, he said bluntly. This is someone deeply entangled in potentially dangerous situations. We need to approach this as both an addiction intervention and a security issue. Over the next 2 days, a plan took shape. David assembled a team including an addiction counselor, a security specialist, and a legal advocate. Using some of my lottery winnings discreetly channeled through the trust, I secured a place for Tyler at an inpatient treatment facility that specialized in dual diagnosis cases. Meanwhile, Michael Reeves continued his surveillance, documenting Tyler's increasingly desperate meetings with his creditors. The security team installed additional cameras around my property and provided me with a panic button connected directly to police dispatch. We're gathering evidence, Michael explained during our daily briefing, but we're also preparing for direct intervention if necessary. The night before the planned intervention, I sat in my kitchen unable to sleep, staring at old photos of Tyler, his first baseball game, high school graduation, the early college years before everything went wrong. When had I lost him? Could I get him back? My phone buzzed with a text from Joyce. You're doing the right thing. Stay strong. I'm here, whatever happens. As dawn broke, I made a final call to the intervention team. I'm ready, I told David. Let's bring my son home. The carefully orchestrated plan began at 10 a.m. I waited at a secure location while the intervention team approached Tyler at his current residence, a motel on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. They would present him with 2 options: enter treatment immediately or face the legal consequences of his actions, including the evidence we'd gathered about his threats. At 10:43, my phone rang David's number. Mrs. Wilson, he said, his voice tight. There's been a complication. Tyler wasn't at the motel. According to his roommate, he left last night saying he needed to settle things with his mother once and for all. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? We don't know. But given the circumstances, we've notified the police. They're sending a patrol car to your house now to check. I didn't hear the rest. My security app had just sent an alert motion detected at my front door. On my phone screen, I watched as Tyler pounded on my door, then moved to try the windows. He was alone, agitated, constantly looking over his shoulder. After finding no way in, he returned to his car and pulled something from the trunk, a crowbar. With shaking fingers, I pressed the panic button. Blue and red lights flashed through the residential street as 2 police cruisers converged on my house. On my phone screen, I watched Tyler freeze mid-motion, crowbar in hand, as officers approached with weapons drawn. "Drop the tool and put your hands where we can see them," an officer commanded. For one terrifying moment, Tyler looked ready to run or worse, to fight. Then his shoulders slumped. The crowbar clattered to the ground. I watched, heart pounding, as they handcuffed my son and placed him in the back of a patrol car. Another officer retrieved something from Tyler's vehicle, a duffel bag that he handled with obvious caution. My phone rang. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Officer Ramirez. We've apprehended a suspect attempting to break into your residence. Can you come to the station to make a statement?" 40 minutes later, I sat in a sterile interview room across from Detective Sarah Lombard, a middle-aged woman with compassionate eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mrs. Wilson, I understand this is difficult," she began, "but I need to ask, do you wish to press charges against your son?" "What exactly was he arrested for?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Attempted breaking and entering, possession of burglary tools, and," she hesitated, "possession of an unregistered firearm and a controlled substance. The bag in his vehicle contained a handgun, approximately 4 ounces of cocaine, and various prescription medications." My breath caught. "A gun? Was it loaded?" "Yes." Detective Lombard's expression softened slightly. "There's more. We found duct tape, zip ties, and latex gloves. Given these items, combined with previous threats documented by your private investigator, we're also considering charging him with attempted kidnapping or worse." She slid a document across the table. "These are the potential charges and sentencing guidelines. First-degree burglary alone carries 5 to 20 years. The weapons charge adds another 5 to 10. The narcotics possession with apparent intent to distribute is 3 to 7 years. If we pursue the attempted kidnapping charge, that's an additional 10-25 years. He's looking at decades in prison, Mrs. Wilson." The clinical description of what my son apparently planned sent ice through my veins. This wasn't just a desperate plea for money or a drug-fueled mistake. This was premeditated. "I want to see him," I said. Detective Lombard nodded. "He's been processed and placed in a holding cell. I should warn you, he's coming down from something cocaine, most likely. He may not be himself." "He hasn't been himself for a long time," I replied. They led me to an observation room with a one-way mirror overlooking a small interview room. Tyler sat at a metal table, handcuffed, his leg bouncing frantically. His eyes darted around the room, and he periodically wiped sweat from his forehead despite the room's chill. "Can I speak with him alone?" I asked. "I can't allow that," Detective Lombard said, "but we can bring him in here with officers present." Minutes later, Tyler was escorted in. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the orange jumpsuit and the harsh fluorescent lighting. When he saw me, his expression cycled rapidly through surprise, anger, and something like shame before settling into careful neutrality. "Mom," he said, his voice raspy, "you need to bail me out. This is all a misunderstanding." I studied his face, the face I'd known from its first moments in this world. The face that once lit up when I entered a room, that scrunched in concentration over homework, that beamed with pride at graduations and baseball games. "Was it a misunderstanding when you broke into my house last month?" I asked quietly. "Or when you searched my financial documents? Or when you discussed causing me an accident with your loan shark friends?" His eyes widened. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting myself." My voice remained calm, though inside I was shaking. "Just like I'm trying to protect you now. By getting me arrested?" He slammed his handcuffed wrists on the table. "Some protection. Tyler, you came to my house with a gun, drugs, and restraints," I said. "What was your plan? To scare me into giving you money? To hurt me for insurance? To make me disappear?" His face crumpled. "I wouldn't have hurt you. I just needed leverage. They're going to kill me if I don't pay." "Who? The loan sharks?" He nodded miserably. "I owe them $57,000. The interest keeps growing. They gave me 3 days to pay or—" He drew his finger across his throat. "So you decided threatening your mother was the solution?" I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. "I was desperate," he shouted, then lowered his voice when an officer stepped forward. "I thought maybe you had savings, retirement accounts, something I could use as collateral. And the gun? The drugs?" "The gun was for protection. The drugs—" He looked away. I needed something to give me courage. We sat in silence, the gulf between us wider than ever. My son, my beautiful boy, had become someone I couldn't recognize, someone willing to terrify his own mother, to feed his addictions and pay his debts. I'm not posting bail, I said finally, but I am going to help you. His head snapped up. How? I've arranged a place for you at Valley Ridge Treatment Center. If the judge agrees to court-ordered rehabilitation instead of jail time, you can go there directly. Rehab? He scoffed. I don't need— You came to my house with cocaine and a loaded gun, I interrupted. You're facing years in prison. Rehabilitation is your best option, and I've pulled every string I can to make it available to you. And if I refuse? I stood up, steadier than I'd felt in months. Then you'll face the consequences of your actions without my help. I love you, Tyler, but I won't enable your self-destruction any longer. As I turned to leave, he called out, Mom, wait. I paused, hand on the doorknob. How did you afford Valley Ridge? He asked suspiciously. That place costs a fortune. I looked back at my son, desperate, calculating even now. I have resources you don't know about, I said simply. And they're going to help you get well, not feed whatever is destroying you. I walked out, leaving Tyler staring after me, confusion replacing the manipulation on his face for the first time in years. 6 weeks passed with Tyler in Valley Ridge's secure rehabilitation facility. The court had agreed to treatment in lieu of immediate prosecution, with charges held in abeyance pending successful completion of the program. His cooperation with authorities regarding the loan shark operation had helped secure this arrangement. The prosecutor initially balked at the idea, given the severity of the charges, but Michael Reeves and Patricia had coordinated an effective strategy. Tyler provided critical information about Castellanos' illegal loan operation, which law enforcement had been trying to crack for years. The district attorney agreed to the diversion program after Tyler's cooperation led to 3 high-profile arrests. The deal wasn't lenient. Tyler would still face reduced charges upon completion of treatment, likely resulting in probation rather than incarceration, and he would remain under court supervision for years. One failed drug test would send him directly to prison to face the original charges. I received weekly progress reports from his counselors. The first month was brutal detoxing from multiple substances, confronting the magnitude of his gambling addiction, and dealing with the legal consequences of his actions. He refused to see me for the first 3 weeks, citing shame, according to his therapist. On week 7, I received a call from Dr. Harriet White, Tyler's primary therapist. Mrs. Wilson, Tyler has requested a family session, she said. He's ready to take accountability for his actions toward you. Would you be willing to participate? The following Saturday, I drove through Valley Ridge's sprawling grounds, past gardens maintained by residents and meditation paths winding through mature oak trees. For $3,000 per day, paid discreetly through the Pine Valley Trust, it offered the best addiction treatment on the East Coast. Dr. White met me in the reception area. Before you see Tyler, I want to prepare you, she said, leading me to her office. He's in a vulnerable state. The protective shell of denial has broken, and he's facing the full impact of his actions for perhaps the first time in years. Is this real? I asked hesitantly. Or is it manipulation? She considered the question carefully. In addiction treatment, we're always alert for manipulation, but Tyler has shown consistent behavioral markers of genuine therapeutic engagement. That said, recovery isn't linear. There will be setbacks. What should I expect today? Tyler wants to make amends part of his 12-step work. He'll acknowledge specific harms he's caused you. Your role is simply to listen, not to absolve or accuse. She paused. Can you do that? I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. After years of Tyler's lies, could I trust anything he said? The family meeting room was bright and comfortable, with overstuffed chairs and landscape paintings. Tyler sat waiting, dressed in jeans and a plain blue sweater, casual clothes. Not the institutional scrubs I'd expected. He looked simultaneously younger and older than his 30 years, clearer eyes, but deeper worry lines. Mom, he said, standing awkwardly as I entered. Thank you for coming. We sat facing each other while Dr. White took a chair slightly removed from us. Tyler cleared his throat. I've prepared some things to say. He withdrew a folded paper from his pocket. Part of my recovery is making amends, which starts with acknowledging what I've done. He unfolded the paper with trembling hands. I manipulated you financially, taking advantage of your love to fund my addictions. I lied constantly. I invaded your privacy by searching your home. I stole your spare key. I broke into your house. I endangered your safety by bringing criminal elements into your life. His voice cracked. "And I planned to threaten you for money that night I was arrested." Each admission felt like a physical blow. Hearing the litany of betrayals stated so plainly made them more real somehow. "The worst part," Tyler continued, "is that I convinced myself these weren't real harms because you owed me as my mother. I told myself terrible lies about you, that you'd failed me, that you deserved it." He looked up, his eyes wet. "The truth is, you were the only person who never gave up on me, and I repaid that with cruelty." I sat perfectly still, afraid that any movement might shatter this moment of brutal honesty. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I'm not asking for that. I just want you to know that I see clearly now what I've done, and I'm committed to change." When he finished, silence filled the room. Dr. White nodded encouragingly toward me. "Thank you for your honesty," I said finally. "I want to believe you're changing, but you're not sure you can," Tyler finished for me. "I understand. Trust has to be earned." Something in his acceptance, the lack of defensiveness or manipulation, felt different from all our previous interactions. "Tell me about your treatment," I said, changing direction. "What are you learning?" For the next hour, Tyler spoke with surprising insight about his dual diagnoses, substance use disorder and gambling addiction, complicated by depression and possible bipolar tendencies. He described his daily routine of therapy, group sessions, and mindfulness practices. He spoke about facing the wreckage of his choices without making excuses. As our session concluded, Dr. White asked, "Is there anything else either of you would like to address today?" Tyler hesitated. "There is one thing." He turned to me. "Mom, I know you're hiding something important. Something changed before I was arrested. You had money for this place, for the private investigator." My pulse quickened. How much had he pieced together? "Did you sell the house?" he asked. "Cash out retirement accounts? Whatever it is, I'm worried you've compromised your future to help me." The irony nearly made me laugh. After years of seeking my money, now he was concerned about my financial security. "I have resources that are being managed responsibly," I said carefully. "That's all you need to know right now." "But, Tyler," I interrupted gently, "part of recovery is accepting boundaries. My financial situation is a boundary I'm establishing." He looked ready to argue, but caught himself. "You're right," he said after a moment. "I don't have the right to question that, especially given my history." As I drove home, I replayed the session in my mind. The change in Tyler seemed genuine, but experience had taught me caution. Real recovery would require more than words. It would demand consistent action over time. Still, for the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel something dangerous: hope. The conference room of Mercer and Hodge law firm buzzed with activity as Patricia guided us through the final paperwork establishing the New Dawn Foundation. After 9 months of planning, my vision was becoming reality. "Once you sign these documents," Patricia explained, "the foundation will be officially incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit organization with an initial endowment of $15 million from the Pine Valley Trust." I signed where indicated, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced since my teaching days. The New Dawn Foundation would provide treatment scholarships for addiction patients who couldn't afford quality care, fund research into more effective recovery protocols, and support families affected by substance abuse. "Congratulations, Margaret," said Dr. Martinez, who had joined our board as clinical advisor. "This foundation will change countless lives." To protect my privacy, I would serve officially only as a board member and program director, not as the primary donor. The organizational structure created by Patricia's team effectively obscured the connection between the lottery winnings and the foundation. As our meeting concluded, Dr. Martinez stayed behind. "Have you thought about what you'll tell Tyler?" she asked. "He's completing his program in 3 weeks." Tyler had now been at Valley Ridge for nearly 11 months. His recovery, while not without setbacks, had been remarkable. He had maintained sobriety, engaged fully in therapy, and even begun mentoring newer patients. His therapists reported genuine transformation in his thinking patterns and behavior. "I'm still not sure," I admitted. "Part of me wants to tell him everything. Another part remains cautious." "Trust is rebuilt gradually," she reminded me. "You're right to proceed carefully." The following Sunday, I visited Tyler at Valley Ridge. These visits had become bi-weekly rituals, no longer supervised therapy sessions, but increasingly normal conversations between mother and son. We walked the facility's garden paths, autumn leaves crunching beneath our feet. Tyler looked healthy, clear-eyed, steady, present in a way he hadn't been for years. "I've been accepted to the halfway house program," he said. "3 more weeks here, then I'll transition to Oakwood House. It's structured living with continued therapy. But I'll be able to work part-time." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "Have you thought about what kind of work you'd like to do?" He nodded. "The vocational counselor helped me find a position at a printing company. Entry-level, of course, but they work with people in recovery." He hesitated. "It's not glamorous, but it's honest work." "I'm proud of you," I said, surprised by the tears that suddenly threatened. Truly proud. We sat on a stone bench overlooking a small pond. A comfortable silence stretched between us, so different from the tense, manipulative interactions of the past. "There's something I need to tell you," Tyler said finally. "I've been accepted to community college. Just 1 class to start Introduction to Addiction Counseling. My therapist thinks I might have aptitude for it once I'm further along in my own recovery." "That's a big step," I said carefully. "What about the printing job?" "I'd do both. Class 2 evenings a week, work during days." He looked at me directly. "I'm not asking you for money, Mom. I've applied for financial aid, and I've been saving from my work program here." His declaration, so different from our interactions over the last decade, caught me off guard. "I never thought I'd say this," Tyler continued, "but getting arrested was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to stop running from myself." He turned the AA medallion he carried now, marking 10 months of sobriety. "I have a long way to go, but for the first time, I actually believe I can make it." I reached for his hand, and he squeezed mine gently. "There's something else," he said hesitantly. "I heard about a new foundation that opened in Pittsburgh, New Dawn Foundation. They're looking for peer support specialists, people in recovery who can work with new patients." His eyes lit up with purpose. "I won't be qualified for at least a year, but eventually, maybe." My heart pounded. "You're interested in working there?" "Not just working. It's the kind of place where I could really make a difference. Use my experience to help others." He shrugged self-consciously. "Probably a pipe dream, but it gives me something to work toward." The irony was almost overwhelming. My son wanted to work for the foundation I had created, the foundation funded by money I still hadn't told him about. As we walked back toward the facility, Tyler stopped suddenly. "Mom, can I ask you something? It's been bothering me." I tensed, bracing for questions about my finances. "Have you been taking care of yourself?" he asked instead. "All this time, your focus has been on me and my problems. But what about you? What do you want for your life?" The question startled me. In all our years together, Tyler had never asked about my desires, my dreams. "I'm working on that," I said truthfully. "For so long, I defined myself by my roles: teacher, mother, caretaker. Now I'm discovering who Margaret Wilson is beyond those roles." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to get to know that Margaret." 2 days later, I sat in Patricia's office, having made my decision. "I want to create a separate trust for Tyler," I told her, "but with conditions." Together, we designed a structured trust that would activate only after Tyler maintained 5 years of verified sobriety. Even then, distributions would be limited to education, healthcare, or legitimate business investment, never cash that could enable relapse. "This balances protection with opportunity," Patricia observed. "But when will you tell him about the lottery?" "Not yet," I said firmly. "Recovery is still too fragile. For now, let him focus on building his life from the ground up. The foundation is giving him purpose, a goal to work toward. That's worth more than money." As I left Patricia's office, my phone chimed with a text from Joyce. "Dinner tonight? Frank and I have a proposal for that European trip we've been discussing." I smiled, typing back, "I'll bring the wine." For the first time in decades, I was building a life centered around my own joy rather than someone else's needs. The lottery had given me financial freedom, but the real wealth was in reclaiming myself. 18 months after his release from Valley Ridge, Tyler stood before the audience at New Dawn Foundation's first community recognition event. As a peer support intern, a position he'd earned after a year at the halfway house, followed by 6 months of additional training, he was sharing his story with donors, treatment professionals, and family members affected by addiction. "My rock bottom wasn't losing my home or my job," he said, his voice steady. "It was the moment I realized I'd become the kind of person who would threaten his own mother, the one person who never stopped believing in me. I watched from the back of the room, my chest tight with complicated emotions. Tyler had no idea I was there as the Foundation's program director who worked primarily behind the scenes. My attendance wasn't expected at this smaller event. Recovery isn't just about staying sober, Tyler continued. It's about becoming someone you can respect when you look in the mirror. I'm still working on that every day. After the presentations, I slipped out before Tyler could see me. My taxi driver recognized me as I gave him my address. "Hey, aren't you Tyler Wilson's mom?" he asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "My brother's in the new Dawn program. Says your son is one of the best peer counselors they've got." "Yes, that's my son," I said, a strange pride filling me. Must be nice seeing him doing so well after everything. I nodded, wondering exactly how much everything this stranger knew. At home, I poured a glass of wine and called Joyce. "He was amazing," I told her. "Confident, articulate, genuinely passionate about helping others." "So when are you going to tell him?" Joyce asked. "About the foundation? About the lottery?" "I don't know," I admitted. "The longer I wait, the harder it gets." The opportunity presented itself sooner than expected. 3 days later, Tyler called, sounding agitated. "Mom, can I come over tonight? There's something I need to talk to you about." My stomach tightened with instinctive worry. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, no, I don't know. I just need to talk to you in person." He arrived at 7, pacing my living room just as he had years ago when asking for money. But this time, his agitation seemed different, confused rather than manipulative. "Mom, something weird is happening at the foundation," he began. "I overheard the executive director talking about Margaret's vision and checking with Margaret about program decisions. They mentioned you by name, but when I asked about it, everyone got weirdly evasive." I sat very still, heart pounding. This moment had always been inevitable. "Then yesterday," Tyler continued, "I was filing donor acknowledgments and I saw the Pine Valley Trust listed as the primary donor, $15 million. The same trust that paid for my treatment." He stopped pacing and looked directly at me. "What's going on, Mom? How are you connected to all this?" The moment stretched between us, fraught with potential consequences. I could manufacture an explanation, maintain the separation between my lottery winnings and my public life, or I could finally tell the truth. "Sit down, Tyler," I said quietly. "There's something I need to tell you." For the next hour, I explained everything the lottery win 2 years ago. My decision to keep it secret, the blind trust, and the creation of the foundation. I showed him documentation Patricia had prepared for this eventual revelation. $47 million, he whispered, stunned. "All this time?" "Yes. And you didn't tell me because when I won, you were still in active addiction," I said gently. "You had just broken into my house looking for money. You were involved with loan sharks. You had discussed causing me harm for insurance money." He flinched at each reminder, but didn't deny anything. "And after I got clean? During this last year and a half? I wanted to be sure the changes were real, not motivated by money." I met his gaze steadily. "And I wanted you to build a life based on your own efforts, not an inheritance." Tyler stood and walked to the window, his back to me. For a long moment he said nothing, shoulders rigid with tension. I braced myself for anger, for accusations, for demands, the old Tyler resurging. When he turned, his face was a storm of conflicting emotions. "How could you keep this from me?" he demanded, voice rising. "After everything we've been through, the therapy, the honesty work you've been lying this whole time?" I remained calm. "I wasn't ready to tell you yet. There's a difference between lying and maintaining privacy while you focused on recovery." "Privacy?" He laughed bitterly. "You founded an entire organization I've been working for, and you didn't think that was relevant to tell me?" "Tyler," he paced the room, running hands through his hair. "Do you have any idea what this feels like? To learn your whole life has been manipulated?" I let him process, watching as he moved from anger to hurt to confusion. Finally, he stopped pacing. "You know what?" he said quietly. "You were right. Of all possible responses, this was the last I expected." "What?" "If I'd known about that money back then, it would have killed me," he said simply. "I would have found a way to get it, used it to destroy myself." He shook his head. "Even 6 months ago, I'm not sure I could have handled knowing." Relief washed through me. "And now?" "Now," he paused, considering. "Now I just want to say thank you. Not for the money. I understand there are conditions on that, and there should be. He took a deep breath. Thank you for having the courage to let me hit bottom instead of rescuing me. Thank you for creating something meaningful out of a terrible situation. He returned to the couch, sitting closer this time. So what happens now? Are you going to announce that you're the founder of New Dawn? No, I said. I prefer working behind the scenes. The foundation is bigger than me. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. There's just one thing I need to know. My position at New Dawn, did you arrange that? Was it charity? Absolutely not, I said firmly. The hiring committee doesn't know you're my son. You earned that position entirely on your own merits. The tension visibly left his body. Good, that matters to me. As Tyler prepared to leave, he hesitated at the door. The trust you mentioned, the one for me that activates after 5 years of sobriety, I don't want to access it then either. What do you mean? I mean I want to amend the conditions. If I maintain sobriety for 5 years, I'd like the trust to fund additional treatment scholarships at New Dawn instead. He smiled slightly. Maybe when I'm 10 years sober, we can revisit my personal access. By then, I hope I'll have proven I can build my own life. As I watched him walk to his modest used car, purchased with his own savings from the printing job, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. My son was truly becoming his own man, one whose worth wasn't measured by money, but by integrity. The fear that had haunted me for so long that the lottery winnings would destroy what remained of my relationship with Tyler had proven unfounded. Instead, we had both found something far more valuable than millions of dollars. Authentic connection built on truth rather than need. And that concludes my formal remarks, I said, stepping away from the podium to unexpected applause. Thank you all for coming today. 5 years had passed since I'd revealed the truth to Tyler. Today marked the grand opening of New Dawn Foundation's second rehabilitation facility, a state-of-the-art treatment center specifically designed for dual diagnosis patients like Tyler had been. As program director, I'd spent the last 3 years developing the center's evidence-based approach, working alongside addiction specialists, former patients, and family members to create something truly revolutionary. Today, standing before the gathered crowd, I felt a sense of completion I'd never experienced before. Tyler approached as the crowd dispersed toward the reception. At 35, he'd matured into a man I barely recognized from the troubled youth he'd once been. Now the foundation's peer support coordinator with a master's degree in addiction counseling, he carried himself with quiet confidence. Great speech. Mom, he said, hugging me. Though you forgot to mention that the family reintegration program was your idea. Our idea, I corrected. The best things at New Dawn have always been collaborative. We walked together through the garden designed by residents of our first facility, past the meditation labyrinth, and toward the small lake at the property's edge. 5 years sober now, Tyler had kept his word about the trust, redirecting the funds to create additional treatment scholarships instead of accessing them personally. Have you decided? He asked as we reached the lakeside bench. About retirement? I smiled. Yes, I'm stepping down as program director next month. Victoria is more than ready to take over. And then? Joyce and I are finally taking that European trip we've been planning for years. 3 months exploring everything from the Louvre to the Greek Isles. I turned to face him fully. But that's not the big news. Tyler raised an eyebrow expectantly. I'm going public, Tyler, about everything, the lottery, the foundation, our story. He looked surprised. After all these years of privacy, what changed? Perspective, I said simply. I've realized our story might help others struggling with addiction in their families. Not the money part, that was just a catalyst, but the journey from enabling to healthy boundaries, from fear to trust. How will you do it? I'm writing a book. When Patience Runs Out, our story from my perspective. I've already spoken with a publisher. I watched his face carefully. But I won't proceed without your blessing. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, looking out across the water. Will you include everything? The threats? The break-ins? The arrest? Yes, I said honestly. But also the recovery, the transformation, the reconciliation, the full journey. He nodded slowly. Then I think you should do it. Maybe, he hesitated, maybe I could contribute a chapter from my perspective, if that would help. I'd like that, I said, throat tight with unexpected emotion. As we walked back toward the reception, Tyler asked, Have you ever regretted it? Not telling me about the lottery right away? Never, I answered without hesitation. Money would have been a poor substitute for what we've built instead: trust, respect, genuine connection. And what about forgiveness? He asked quietly. Have you really forgiven me for everything I put you through? I considered the question seriously. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, Tyler. It's been a process for both of us. I needed to forgive you for the manipulation and threats. You needed to forgive me for the tough love that felt like abandonment at the time. And yourself? Have you forgiven yourself for the enabling? His perception startled me. I'm still working on that one, I admitted. At the reception, I watched Tyler move confidently among donors and treatment professionals, sharing his expertise and passion for recovery work. My son, once lost to addiction and criminality, now helped others find their way back from similar darkness. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, Dr. Martinez, now the Foundation's clinical director, joined me on the veranda. I remember when you first came to the support group, she said. Terrified, heartbroken, convinced you'd lost your son forever. I was certain I'd failed him, I agreed. That all my sacrifices had somehow created his problems. And now? I gazed across the grounds where residents were gathering for an evening community meeting. Now I understand that we save ourselves. I couldn't save Tyler, he had to do that himself. Just as I had to save myself from the pattern of enabling that was destroying us both. The money changed everything, didn't it? She asked. No, I said thoughtfully. The money just accelerated the inevitable confrontation. The real change came from finding my voice, setting boundaries, demanding truth. I smiled. Things I could have done without a penny to my name. As if summoned by our conversation, Tyler approached with a young woman I recognized as a new counselor. Mom, this is Emma. She's implementing that family communication protocol we developed last year. His voice held unmistakable pride. Emma, this is my mother, Margaret Wilson, the heart and soul of New Dawn Foundation. I extended my hand, but Emma surprised me with a hug instead. Thank you, she whispered. My brother completed your program last year. You saved his life and our family. As she moved away to greet other guests, Tyler grinned at my expression. That happens a lot, you know. People whose lives you've touched without even realizing it. I corrected gently. People whose lives we've touched. That night, driving home to the modest house I'd kept all these years, despite having the means to live anywhere, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. From desperate single mother to terrified victim to empowered advocate. From lottery winner to philanthropist to author. The road had been neither straight nor easy. There had been setbacks, moments when Tyler struggled, when old patterns threatened to resurface, when trust remained fragile. But we had persevered, one day at a time, building something neither of us could have imagined during those darkest days. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone chimed with a text from Tyler. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when it meant letting go. Love you, Mom. Some fortunes, I realized, couldn't be measured in millions. Some jackpots were paid in moments like these, in reconciliation, purpose, and the quiet joy of reclaimed connection. When patience runs out, sometimes that's when true change begins. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.